Before we kind of jump into things, I want to real quick remind you and especially invite you to be here next Sunday for our Easter service. We have two services, 9:30 and 11, so we'd love for you to come and be a part of that. We have a few kind of special things worked into the service for next week. I'm not going to tell you about them. You have to just come and find out what they are. But even more than that, we hope that you're inviting some people to come with you. You know, we've been doing our Easter Invite Challenge over the past several weeks. And asking you to be praying about who could I invite to come with me to church. You know, this time of year, just like similar to Christmas, these are the times that people are a little more open to the idea of going and checking out church for a little bit. And so, and we also know that people are a whole lot more open to an invite from a friend or a family member, someone they know. So we would love for you to bring some folks with you next week to one of our services. On February 14th in 1913, a little girl was born to a family in Tuskegee, Alabama. She was born to her teacher mom and her carpenter dad. And this young girl, unfortunately, as she grew through her young years, she struggled with poor health because of chronic tonsillitis. And she eventually started to kind of grow up and learn different things. Her mom started teaching her the skill of sewing. Eventually, she even, on her own, sewed one of her own dresses. But unfortunately, after a while, she had to, around her high school years, had to drop out of high school to be able to care for her grandmother who was in failing health. Now, this young woman was also an African-American woman who was living in the South, and so she also, in addition to all the other kind of things health-wise and family-wise that were going on, she also had to deal with some of the Jim Crow laws that were going on at that time and segregation. And it wasn't until one day in 1955 that she was going home from work that she went from being just another black woman in Alabama to being a household name in the civil rights movement. Rosa Parks boarded a bus that day, one evening after working all day long. And sometimes I think when we think of Rosa Parks and the situation that happened with her on the bus, that we kind of picture her as this woman that was sitting in the very front row of the bus. That's actually not where she was sitting. She was actually sitting in the front row of the colored section of the bus, which was 5 rows back in the bus. The way that seating worked in those buses in those days is that the first few rows of the bus was reserved for white passengers, and there would be a sign on like the 4th or 5th row that said colored section. And as white passengers filled up the first few rows, if there was no more room, the bus driver would go and move that sign a few rows back, and those who were sitting in those seats, well, they had to get up and move so that white passengers could sit down. And there was an article that was written about this situation, and it said this about it all. It said, near the middle of the bus, her row was directly behind the 10 seats reserved for the white passengers. This is about Rosa again. As the bus traveled along its regular route, all of the white-only seats began to fill up. The bus reached the 3rd stop in front of the Empire Theater, and several white passengers boarded. Blake, being the bus driver, noted that 2 or 3 white passengers were standing as the front of the bus had filled to capacity. So he moved the colored section sign behind Mrs. Parks and demanded that the 4 black people give up their seats in the middle section so that the white passengers could sit. But, as we know, Ms. Parks did not move. And in a 1987 public television series on the civil rights movement, Rosa Parks said, "When he saw me sitting there, he asked if I was going to stand up. And I said, no, I am not." And he said, well, if you don't stand up, I'm going to have to call the police and have you arrested. And she said, and I love this, "You may do that. You may do that." She was fine with him going to do that. Rosa Parks went really from being a nobody to being an insignificant, just regular person. Nothing special about her life, but her actions and what she did in that moment really in so many ways changed history, and she became in so many different ways a hero to so many people, and even is celebrated today in our culture. Today, as we continue this series, The Road to Easter, we're going to look at another road that Jesus traveled down this path as he was leading him to the cross and even beyond the cross. And my hope is that today we're going to look at kind of an insignificant person, a person that for all kind of intents and purposes, that he really wasn't meant for a whole lot. His life wasn't really planned for a whole lot. But my hope is that we can see within this person someone who is mentioned really only one time in the Bible that we can be reminded that God can use all of us. And maybe even like in the situations that Troy talked about during communion time, that God can use these situations. God can use us. Because I think as kids, we all start out with these great and grand visions and thoughts that we have. Now, sometimes I guess we can blame our parents for kind of drilling those things into our heads of like, you can do anything. And no, you can't. We learn that as we get older, right? But I think as kids, sometimes we have these ideas in mind of like what I want to be when I grow up, because I can do anything and I can do everything. Maybe if if you have in mind that thing you wanted to be as a kid, maybe there was something like a career or a job or a hobby, maybe kind of lean over and tell a person next to you, what was it that you wanted to be when you grew up? And those who are worshiping online, maybe put in the chat, what is it that you wanted to be when you grew up? Now, some people, they kind of still have some of those similar desires and some of those similar goals still going on of things that they want to do with their life eventually. No matter what age they are, they think, one day when I grow up, I want to be this or I want to be that. But today we're going to look at someone that really had no idea what was coming for their life, no idea what God had in store and what God had planned for them, and took them from being just an ordinary, inconspicuous person that didn't really have much plan to being someone that had a very important role in the sacrifice of Jesus. Today we're going to look at several different passages, but really we're going to focus in on just one verse. And we're going to actually see a verse that actually shows up three different times in the different Gospels, three different Gospels. But we're going to start out in Mark chapter 15. So if you have your Bibles and you want to go there, we're going to be in Mark chapter 15. We'll also have our text up on the screen if you want to follow along there. But let's kind of get a framework of where we are before we jump into this passage. 2 weeks ago, we started off with Jesus' triumphal entry. Like Troy said, that's actually kind of what we celebrate today with Palm Sunday. We're kind of spreading out this last week of Jesus' life over several weeks, and that's the reason why we're not talking about Palm Sunday today. But last week, we talked about the Garden of Gethsemane, where Jesus went and he prayed the night that he was betrayed and arrested and taken away, and he spent that time there praying fervently. And we saw how his natural reaction to all that he knew what he was about to face, he knew what was coming, and his natural reaction wasn't to run away, wasn't to figure out a new plan, but it was to go and to find his Father and to pray and to spend time praying to him. And then after he is there praying, we see Jesus is betrayed, he's arrested, and he's then taken and put on trial. He's actually put on trial at 6 different trials. First, it's with Annas, the former high priest, and then it's with Caiaphas, the current high priest, and then the Jewish leaders try him, and then he's sent before Pilate, who couldn't find any guilt, and then he's sent before Herod Antipas, who couldn't find any guilt either, so he sends him back to Pilate, and then Pilate still can't find any guilt, but then he releases him to the religious leaders who are pressuring him to finally be sent off to be crucified. And then after that, Jesus is mocked, and he is beaten, and then we pick up in Mark 15 and verse 20. It says, then they led him out to crucify him. And we see in John's gospel, actually, right after this, that it says that they made him carry his own cross. They make Jesus take this cross, this instrument of death, to carry it to the place where he is going to be crucified, to carry it to Golgotha. But then we see in the very next verse, this is really the central focus of where we want to hang out today. In verse 21, it says this, a certain man from Cyrene, Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was passing by on his way in from the country, and they forced him to carry the cross. This morning, I want us to take our time to really focus in on this guy, Simon from Cyrene. Now, of course, Jesus is the star of this event, and many times, Simon might be mentioned here and there about what he did to help out, but I really believe that there's a lot of significance embedded in just this one verse and of what he does and of what happens. But the thing is that we have to understand from the starting point for Simon was that Simon was a nobody. Really, there was nothing overly significant or special about this guy. He was a nobody. Now, we know him today. We know his name, and there's a good chance that he and his family became so well known after a while that's the reason why he's mentioned here in the text that it's Simon, the father of Alexander and Rufus. We don't even see these names really pop up anywhere else. But maybe it's because of this situation. Some commentators, some authors believe that their family became leaders within the first century church, and perhaps that's why they're known now, so that when other people read it, they're like, oh yeah, that family. I know about that family. But somehow, he and his sons become so well known, and for whatever they did, that Mark would mention them here. But what he says about Simon was that he was just some certain man, a certain man, some guy. In fact, in the original phrasing of the Greek translation of how the New Testament was originally written, it's kind of mentioned that way, of that he was just some guy. You see, Simon was really just a nobody. He was some out-of-town guy, some out-of-town guest. He was a foreigner. He wasn't from around there. He had no significance, but that's often how God operates, right? He uses people that we think just have no significance and really aren't anything special about them. You think about King David. King David, who was really in so many ways a nobody, but God turned him into a king. David was the youngest of his brothers. In those days, it was the older brothers that had a lot of prominence and a lot of focus on them. But he was the youngest of the brothers. He was also a shepherd, and shepherds, you didn't always have the most glamorous jobs there. But even when he went to kill Goliath, when God used him to kill Goliath, he was still too young to even be in the military. But God would use this young boy and eventually even use this boy to lead his people. And when God sent Samuel to David's home, his father was named Jesse. When he sent him to Jesse's home, Jesse thinks, oh, great, God's sent his priest to my home to anoint the new king. It's got to be my oldest son. And so he brings out his oldest son, and then his next, and over, God keeps on saying, nope, 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 nope. And it says in 1 Samuel 16, but the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. You see, God doesn't look at the things that we often look at. And so often he uses what we would consider to be nobodies, just like me and just like all of us. God uses these kinds of people, and Simon was a nobody. But even though God had this plan for Simon and God had this plan for this nobody, this wasn't Simon's plan, what he was about to do, what he was being drugged into. The passage said that they forced him to carry the cross. You see, sometimes God has different plans than what we even ever imagine are going to happen. We looked at this kind of 2 weeks ago a little bit when we saw Jesus coming into Jerusalem. The people were excited. They were shouting Hosanna, which originally kind of meant more of a save us kind of thing. It was a cry out that, you're here to save us, Jesus. You're going to topple the government. You're going to put Israel back on top. We're going to be in charge now. But that's not what God had in mind. When Jesus came in, he came in humble and on a donkey. Not a conquering king, but a king who was bringing peace. And this wasn't what Simon had planned for this moment, for this day, for this trip. And Simon just happened to be at this place at this time. You see, if you think about the whole situation, victims of crucifixion, they were often forced to carry their cross with them throughout the city as sort of a display. Because crucifixion wasn't just about killing you. If the Romans wanted to just kill you, they would have just killed you. Crucifixion was about making a statement. And when the Romans used this punishment, they meant to show others the severity of what it meant to step out of line with them. They wanted it to be public. They wanted it to be seen. And so when Jesus comes to this place in the city of Jerusalem, and then all of a sudden there's this Jewish man from Cyrene, which is in modern-day Libya, which is over 1,100 miles away. This man who thought he was there probably thought he was coming there to celebrate the Passover in Jerusalem. That's what he had on his mind, but God had him right where he wanted him because of his plan. In Simon's mind, he was probably planning this trip for a while. I mean, that's a long ways to go. I was looking up kind of on, you ever try to figure out how far away different things are and you look them up on your maps, you're like, okay, well, how far of a drive would this? And I was trying to figure out, well, what big cities would be like 1,100 miles away? And I looked at, it's like, well, how far away is Cincinnati? Nope. How far away is Chicago? Nope. I mean, you keep on going, you go way out to the Midwest before you finally get up to 1,100 miles away. That's how far Simon traveled. And for him, this was probably kind of like a bucket list thing. For Jews, they want to go to Jerusalem to be able to celebrate the Passover feast, the idea of being able to go to there. So it was probably a long planned event. It was probably an expensive trip. He had probably been looking forward to this, probably went with some others and was finally there. But it says he was passing by on his way in from the country. You get into the new place where you're going to be staying for your vacation or your trip, and you're checking it all out, and you're like, oh, we're finally here. We finally made it. And for Simon, he shows up, and right when he gets there, he's yanked out of his plan. You see, God had a different plan. God had a different timing. In Proverbs 16:9, it says, in their hearts, humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps. You see, we sometimes think that we have things planned out, right? We think we have things just so perfectly set in place, and we have this idea of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, but we need to be so much more open-handed with our plans and how we plan things. Ed Wada, he likes to say in our life group that it's okay to plan things, but don't try and plan the outcome, because we don't control how things are going to happen. Because God may have something else in mind, something greater, something more impacting, something more powerful, even when it seems like an accident to us, right? And in this moment, Simon might have actually been kind of upset that all of this has happened, that he is here for this special day, for this special trip, this special moment in this way, and he's pulled out of the crowd and he's forced to carry this cross. And he probably didn't even know who Jesus was, because again, 1,100 miles away, he shows up and there's this criminal carrying this cross out to be crucified, and he's forced to come in there and take it. And so while he's there and he gets this cross on him, remember, Jesus has been beaten just to a bloody mess, and so he has this cross at first. They give it to Simon. He probably now has Jesus' blood on him. And his plans are ruined. It's probably embarrassing for him that he's been pulled out of the crowd. He's got Jesus' blood on him. And not only to mention the fact that if he was there for the Passover feast, for him to have someone else's blood on him, he's now ceremonially unclean. He can't go to the temple. He can't celebrate the Passover there. That's the whole reason he is there, and it's ruined. Or so he thought. You see, Simon thought he was there for one thing. Simon thought he was there to celebrate the Passover, but really, Simon was there to minister to Jesus. And I want you to kind of hang with me here for a second. Let me explain what I mean by that Simon was there to minister to Jesus. You remember last week we saw in Jesus' prayer in the Garden of Gethsemane, in Luke chapter 22 and verse 41. It says, he withdrew about a stone's throw beyond them, knelt down and prayed, Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me, yet not my will, but yours be done. An angel from heaven appeared and strengthened him, and he began, and being in anguish, he prayed even more earnestly, and his sweat like drops of blood falling to the ground. So Jesus is here in the garden, and he's praying, Father, take this cup from me. And this is right before he's arrested, right before he's going to be taken off and experience all these different things and then be crucified and be killed in this awful, horrific, embarrassing, terrible way. But then if we jump ahead to the book of Hebrews, in Hebrews 5:7, the author says this. It says, during the days of Jesus' life on earth, he offered up prayers and petitions with fervent cries and tears to the one who could save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverent submission. Now, I don't know about you, but when I read that passage in Hebrews 5:7, I can't help but think that the Hebrews writer must be talking about Jesus' prayer there in the Garden of Gethsemane, of Jesus' fervent cries, of his tears in his prayer, of his submission, of him calling out to the one who could save him from death. But I can't help but think that he is referring to this situation right there in Gethsemane. I mean, maybe other times he was praying, but he had to be in the forefront of his mind as he's writing out these words. He had to be thinking about this. But how can this author say that Jesus was heard? How could he say that in those moments of Jesus calling out and crying out, how could he say that he was heard? Because we know that Jesus went on and had to face the cross and had to die for us. But maybe it doesn't mean that Jesus or God heard his son and said, okay, we'll do something else. Because the truth is, he had to die. There had to be a sacrifice for our sins. So how can the author say this then? How can the author of Hebrews say this? Well, I believe that he is about to prepare his son to endure something terrible and awful. You see, when the author is saying that Jesus was praying there, praying, take this cup from me, he was still going to face the cross. He was going to still die a horrible death, a painful death. And think about all the things that went on, not just the physical side. The Jews who just a few days before, who were shouting, Hosanna, Hosanna, were just a few hours later are going to shout, crucify him. Or his disciples, who are the followers, all the people that kind of the mass of people that were with him, are going to desert him and scatter and hide. Even his close apostles, the 12 of them. One of them is going to betray him by bringing the soldiers to arrest him. Another one of them, Peter, is going to deny even knowing him. And again, like I said, he's going to go through 6 different trials. Then he's going to be beaten to almost an unrecognizable state, mocked and tormented by the soldiers, then forced to carry his own mode of torture and death to a place that he's going to be hung on this cross, which was probably an extremely heavy cross, a huge burden. He carries it on his lacerated and bloodied back. Then he's going to go and then be hung on that cross, go through a long and agonizing death, which is probably going to usually end in suffocation. They would hang him in such a way that their lungs would be kind of almost, his airways be closed up because of the way he's hanging. And the only way he could get a breath is to push down on that spike through his feet to push him up just a little bit to get a breath in. And eventually they would succumb to just suffocation. And in the midst of all that, as if that wasn't enough, he's going to take the sin of the world onto him and be our sacrifice. You see, I believe this is what Jesus had in mind when he's praying, Father, take this cup from me. And so when the Hebrew writer says that he was heard, he didn't mean, okay, God said, okay, well, you don't have to do that. We'll do something else instead. No, he meant, I'm going to make the unbearable bearable for you. Because look back at what happened when Jesus prayed in the middle of the garden. In verse 43 of Luke 22, it says, an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And it was in that moment that God began to give Jesus the encouragement and the strength to endure what he was going to have to face. God wasn't answering this prayer by taking away this death, by taking away this pain. He answered this prayer by giving him the endurance and the encouragement and the strength to go through this struggle and this pain. Now, the whole reason I bring all that up, I know we covered that last week, but the whole reason I bring this up again while we're talking about Simon of Cyrene is that perhaps Simon was just one more way that God was encouraging and supporting and helping his son endure something that seemed so unbearable. God had Simon at just the right spot, at just the right time to offer just the right kind of support that Jesus needed. And when we find ourselves in those situations like Simon did, where plans are ruined, where it seems like God is stepping in and just changing everything and ruining all that I had in mind, and maybe it's in those moments where it's kind of minor struggles and minor inconveniences for us, but God is trying to use us, use you and me to minister to someone else who is going through trouble and who is going through pain. This is why we should have a different perspective on trials and struggles, kind of like what James says in James 1, verse 2. He says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Maybe in the moment when it seems like all of our plans are being derailed and being ruined and our life is just falling apart and coming to a crashing halt or whatever, maybe we need to stop and we need to do what James tells us here. And we need to ask God for some wisdom. When we feel ourselves in that moment of pain and trial, we need to say, all right, God, not in a rude way. All right, God, what's your problem? What's the deal? But more of, all right, God, what are you trying to do? What do you want me to do? And see maybe how God might be trying to use us to minister to someone else. But there's one more thing I want us to see about Simon. Something else that happens here that I don't want us to miss. And actually, it's in Luke's gospel, not even in Mark's where we started out. In Luke 23 and verse 26, it says, as the soldiers led him away, they seized Simon from Cyrene, who was on his way in from the country, and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. Now, I've said this many times, that Luke was a details kind of guy. Luke was a physician. He was all about getting the details right. And so when he would tell stories, when Luke would retell stories, or when he's writing out his gospel account, he wanted to get the details. Is anybody here a detail person when they retell stories? Like, do you take a story that should be like, a minute long and it's like, an hour long or whatever. I won't say who in my family is that way, but her initials are Beth Thompson. But I'm a person that's like, I want to get to the point. I want to get rolling. What's the point? Let's tell it and move on with life. I'm more like Mark. Mark's gospel is like concise. He moves from one thing to another and moves on. But Luke, he gets the details. Okay, I'm going to redeem myself here, Beth. He gets the details because details are important when we talk about Jesus and his life. You see, I can't help but look at that phrase of the fact that it said that they made him carry it behind Jesus. I can't look at that phrase and not think of what Luke recorded of Jesus saying earlier in his life in Luke 9:23. Then he said to them all, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny himself, take up their cross, and follow me." You see, in so many ways, this is exactly what is happening to Simon. Simon had to give up what he had planned. Simon he encountered an unexpected moment from God, and he literally took up his cross and followed Jesus. You see, I believe that Simon, in so many ways, became a picture of discipleship. He became a picture of what it means to be a disciple of Jesus. He denied himself. He picked up this cross and he followed Jesus. And you might hear me say that, and you might say, well, that's different. Simon didn't have a choice in the matter. It was kind of dropped into his lap. And that's true. But the thing is that I believe there are so many times that God tries to drop these situations into our laps, situations where if we would just make the decision to trust him and follow him and go God's way and follow his plan, and choose to respond in that way, that we could be following God's guidance. We could be following God's plan, but so often we want to go in a different route. So often we get annoyed by when God does that and head in a different way. And it wasn't that, that we think that it was orchestrated in some way by someone else or by ourselves, but we see it and we're like, okay, God, I see what you're doing in my life, and we get so annoyed and we get so bent out of shape just because my plans are messed up. We don't know what happened with Simon after this. We don't know kind of what went on with his life. He's not really mentioned anymore in the Bible. But if we stop and we think about how all this played out, I can't help but think in my mind the progression of what must have happened next for him. Maybe they get to Golgotha and he's got that cross on his back still, and they take that cross from Simon and they drop it to the ground, and it hits the ground there with a loud thud, and he's probably now covered with Jesus' blood on his back now. They lay Jesus on top of that cross and they begin to nail him to that cross. And I think he's probably standing there kind of awestruck and confused about what's going on. And he's seeing maybe his family that had come with him to celebrate the Passover. Maybe he kind of sees them at a distance and he's thinking, what is going on and what is happening here? Maybe his family is beginning to kind of understand what's going on too. And he's watching this guy, Jesus, be hung to a cross and stood up and hung there. And maybe his reaction is similar to what we see in Mark 15:39 of this soldier. It says, "And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, 'Surely this man was the Son of God.'" I wonder if it had a similar effect on Simon. Again, we don't really know, but here's the deal. Here's the whole reason I brought Simon up this morning. Here's the reason that we're focusing on this seemingly insignificant person. So many of us are never going to be the Peter or the John or the James or the Pauls in life, right? We're never going to be the big names. We're never going to lead the huge kind of missionary journeys to go and plant churches all over the place. So most of us are just not going to be that way. Most of us, a lot of people aren't going to know our names. We're not going to be famous. More than likely, you and I, we're simply going to be people like Simon of Cyrene. And if we would just walk through life looking for those little moments where we intersect with Jesus, when Jesus is trying his best to try and guide us into his plan and use us in his way. And if we would be willing in those moments to pick up our cross, to put it on our back, even if it's covered in his blood, even though if it's really heavy and uncomfortable, and to carry it and to follow him little by little, step by step, I believe that God can use that kind of faithfulness to make a difference in the lives of the people around us. You see, I want to challenge you to make yourself available like Simon. I think back to where we started this morning with Rosa Parks. She didn't get on that bus that day looking to start a fight. She didn't get on that bus that day looking to make a name for herself. She just wanted to go home after work, right? She was tired. She didn't want to deal with nonsense anymore. She was just on her way home. And Simon, when he showed up in this moment in Jerusalem, this wasn't his plan. And so for you and for me, as we go about our days, as we go about our plans, I want to challenge you, I want to encourage you to be looking for those times, looking for those opportunities that God wants to do something in our ordinary, plain lives, but to do them in extraordinary ways. And even when it seems difficult, and even when it doesn't make sense to us, we need to trust God's plans. We need to trust His timing and His ways and allow Him to use us for those plans. Let's pray. God, it's so easy for me to stand up here and talk about this and to say these things, knowing that when we're at a distance from pain and struggle, and when we're at a distance from those hardships, and when things seem okay, it's easy to talk about all that. But God, I know that in our life we face these different situations where it seems like we're heading in one direction and you step in and something totally changes. God, I don't know what those situations are for different people, and perhaps even in this room, maybe there's some people today that are experiencing that, God. Maybe they thought they heard your calling. Maybe they thought they felt your leading and they were following after you, but then something changed along the way and now it seems like you're leading in a different way or you're doing something else and they're just confused and they don't know what's going on. They're not quite sure what this means. God, I pray that you would help them to be like Simon. Help us all to be like Simon and to just, with open hands, to just simply say, I'm yours. And God, whatever you want to do, take me, use me, lead me. God, may that be our prayer today. May we make ourselves available to you no matter how inconvenient or confusing or difficult it may be. Help us to follow after you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. You know, before I come up here each week, we do a prayer time, and we encourage you to share your prayer requests with us. We encourage you to let us know the things that are going on in your life. But I also want you to know that we also have another prayer time that we offer at different times on different weeks and stuff. And after this sermon today, this is another one of those times we want to offer prayer. Maybe you're in this moment. It's not a prayer request you had planned to write on a piece of paper, but in this moment, through God's word, maybe God has been speaking to you and there's something on your heart. Maybe there is a burden where you kind of feel like, God, what is up? You know, what are you doing in this moment? And you need someone to pray with you about it. I'm going to be in the back. I'm going to invite the other elders to be with me in the back as well. Beth's going to be back there with us. If you want to pray with someone because there is something on your heart, there's something rolling around in your brain, and you're just like, man, I need someone to help me at least pray with me about this and figure out what's going on. We want to do that. Or maybe there is someone else that you have been wanting to pray for. I don't know what it might be. If you need prayer, if you need encouragement, we want to invite you to come find us in the back while we sing this last song together.
Let's all go ahead and stand, and we're going to sing this song together.